Hi, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. So a few weeks ago we did a book on creating characters from the editors of Writer's Digest, and it looked a little bit like this, if you've seen it. Well, today's episode we're going to do another book from the same group. This one's on dialogue. It's called Crafting Dynamic Dialogue, and it has the same basic format, same formatting and everything. It's pretty lucky to open there. You can see how, well, I mean, all books look like that, but like the style, like chapters are just, I always like how clean the chapters look. This one gives you a little microphone. The purpose of this book is to focus entirely on dialogue, just as the last book was designed to focus entirely on characters. And so what it does is it basically takes articles from Writer's Digest, chapters from other Writer's Digest books, books that we've actually covered on the channel before, and it takes key articles or chapters from these books and curates them into a logical progression that focus on the topic of dialogue. And so what it's going to do is it's going to go through 6 different parts showing how dialogue affects the story, how you can use it to your advantage in telling a strong story with conflict and energy and all of that. And the reason why this is important is because dialogue is not just a component of storytelling that we make important. It's also, believe it or not, is something as technical as white space. It gives you your eye less density to focus on, which makes it easier for the reader to not only read, but for the pacing of the story to speed up a little bit, or just to have a much more kind of comfortable pace through your story. And so part of the joy of getting dialogue right is not only finding your characters as more compelling as they would if they just talked in jargon, for example, or if they're flat. So it brings the personality into the characters, but it also, again, gives you an opportunity to speed through scenes that you don't want to labor on by giving flourishing details and things. So the art of crafting dialogue, it's pretty important. Now there's another book I'm not going to cover just because A, I don't have it, and B, to get it would cost me a lot of money, and C, I still haven't finished the book from the author's or the author's previous book, and that's Dialogue by Robert Mckee. I would say, Robert Mckee is one of these authors who he's just brilliant, and I would say even if you do get this book, maybe look at his just to be sure you've got all your ground for dialogue covered. But again, I'm not going to cover that one on this program, or at least not this season, because it's just too much for one season and too much for my wallet. But I would suggest looking at that too before you write off all dialogue completely. But with this book, I think this book does cover a lot of what you need to know in dialogue, and it may even be probably ad nauseum. If I'm being honest, I do feel like this is one of those topics. It's hard to get an entire book out of it and not repeat yourself and not find yourself kind of stating the same things over and over. And I do feel like this particular book will go into that territory a little because, again, you've got almost 30 chapters of dialogue topics. It's was it 26 topics, I think, or 28 chapters. But in fairness, they do make sure that each section, with a few chapters each section, focuses on a particular element. So those elements are, in particular, according to the introduction, you have these categories of Part 1 introduces dialogue, how specific writers use it, and explains how rules can be bent. Part 2 covers the role of dialogue in reader engagement. Part 3 guides you in understanding the basics of dialogue, including how to make it believable using dialect or jargon, and quirks of genre-specific dialogue. Part 4 helps you give voice to your characters, focusing on how to make each one unique. Part 5 delves into the advanced techniques, such as setting the pace, revealing background, and creating emotion. And Part 6 shows you how to use dialogue to advance the plot, including creating tension and suspense, constructing conflict, and utilizing internal dialogue. So internal dialogue would be the stuff that's spoken inside. So like if you are, let's say you're driving along and you're running late, you're not going to say out loud, "Oh no, I'm running late." You're going to think it. And so internal dialogue would be stuff like that, and how to convey that properly without sounding cheesy. And that's really the beauty of this book, is it helps you not be cheesy. So what does that even mean? So let's go ahead and we're going to look at a common problem in writing dialogue. I see this in movies a lot, in particular because movies they're visual mediums, and you really can't get into the character's head like you can in a book. And this is a common argument that a lot of writing books make, is that the difference between the novel and movies, the novel covers both ends, internal and external, whereas movies are typically external. And if you can't capture on camera, then it's not in the screenplay, period. And film noir in particular, the old detective stories, has this notorious habit of having voiceover to communicate inner monologue. And for that particular genre, it's fine. But when it bleeds over into other genres, like I haven't seen it, but I think was it Twilight? Some young adult movie, young adult book turned into a movie, had inner dialogue, voiced over. They didn't have to be that, and it sounded weird. And the idea is, like, you don't want your story, whether it's on film or on page, to sound weird. And if you're trying to do an inner monologue, on a screen, it sounds weird. I decided to do an inner monologue to demonstrate my point, and so. What we're trying to do here with even dialogue in this perspective is, we're trying to put it on the page in a way that's not weird. And that's, it moves the story forward. It's necessary. And so what it's going to do, it's going to go through the craft of not writing banal language, not writing flat language for dialogue, and certainly not using expository dialogue in a cheesy way. So how familiar is this? Hi, Bob, my best friend. How's your day? So I hear you're still working at McDonald's for the 5th year in a row, my best friend. Like, no one says that. And if you're trying to, write that for your reader's benefit, your reader's going to roll their eye. Your reader's going to do something like this. And that's not really the way to go. You want your dialogue to actually matter to the scene. You want it to be natural in how your characters speak to each other, but compelling, because you want to show the conflict in play without it being stupid conflict. Like, you don't want people bickering over dishes or what to eat. There needs to be a real, genuine kind of tension in the words. Like if you have, let's say, like a dual meaning of things, the character wants one thing internally, but expresses it externally another way in order to manipulate another character. That's an example of dialogue going into two directions, and learning how to master that is kind of the point of this book. Not just that, but getting dialogue to work for your story in a way that it layers extra meaning to your characters, to your scenes, even to the setting, if that's the case. Background information. It's a good way to communicate background information without having to go to background information. But again, not in a cheesy way. If you can learn how to develop your inner ear to listen for the way people speak, while natural but not dumb, not including all the stuttering or all the ums and the ands and all the things that you hear me say often, like which, yes, I'm aware I say excessively, and I hate it myself. But that's okay. Thank you for sticking around. And you want to be able to use these systems in a way that's logical and interesting, but not ridiculous. Not. I just did it. See, I don't know if you heard. It's really, really slight. Every time. These things don't need to be in the dialogue, because characters, they speak better than we do. But because they're a reflection of who we are, there's still going to be some nuances in their dialogue. So these are some of the things that this book is going to show you how to do. So most of what dialogue is, it should be pretty obvious to you how to use it, why you use it. And we all know that you need dialogue to speak. You need dialogue to show interaction of characters. If we all just talked in stares, like Twilight again, if you watch honest trailers, you know that the stare is like a big part of it. In fact, they did a compilation where they had like the staring, I think, lasted 26 minutes across all 4 or 5 movies, however many. It's just crazy. 26 minutes of just people looking at each other is insane. If you have never seen that, go on Screen Junkies and take a look at their old. It's probably 5 or 6 years old now, but their old compilations of screen cuts, and they had like the 26-minute Twilight stare. Anyway, you don't want your book to be just that. You want it to have action. You want it to have movement and cause and effect. You want it to have conflict and all of these things. And if you have your dialogue simply things like Bob walks on and says, "Hi, Jim," and Jim says, "Hi, Bob," and they say, "Hey, Bob, how's life?" And Bob says, "Life is good." And then Bob says, "Yeah, so I'm going to leave now." And then Jim say, "Okay, Bob, have a good day." Who cares? So you want to avoid that, and you want to craft something that's more interesting than that around the conflict that you've established, whether it's for that scene or for the whole book. Ideally, in some way, both. It can, again, be external or internal. And then you also how to speak naturally for your character. So things like slang will show up there. You know, do you know the word "yeah" and megabucks? How about reefer? Well, today I'm recording this on April 21st, so if you know what April 20th is, you'll know that this is a word that matters on that day. And if you watch, again, Honest Trailers and Screen Junkies, you'll see that that was the focus of their movies yesterday, was Big Lebowski and Reefer Madness. And it's slang, but it's still relevant for that particular holiday. It's not a holiday. It's not a holiday. If you think it's a holiday, it's not a holiday. They're lying to you. So it's got other things, like you have this one about profanity and how to use it well, how to use it logically. Obviously, not every book needs it. I typically leave profanity out of mine. I just don't think it needs to be said. Even if your characters would be that kind of person, there's nothing wrong with saying, cursed off screen. But this is my favorite, the engine beneath the words, subtext. And you can see too that they're giving you some examples of movies. I think Jaws is like the opening of the book with "We Need a Bigger Boat." It's in Cheryl St. John's Ford. It's got the "We Need a Bigger Boat" from Jaws. Now, I said something about repeat information. So this is where you're going to find, because again, they're essays, they're chapters from other books, all compiled into a resource for you. You will definitely have some overlap here, including a lot of these same authors, these same articles are going to remind you that uhs and ums and you knows are words that we say that our characters may not necessarily need to say. Yes, at some point it's going to be like, okay, I get it already. It's not the writer's fault that other writers also want to say the same thing, because it's that important. So what is it, the one thing that I say in the series over and over, but not every book, but a lot of the books, is that the repetition matters. The more practice we are in our craft, the better we're going to get at it. And sometimes it means learning the same things over and over until it sticks. And that's the thing, is I don't think that's a bad thing to have that repeat information, because by the time you get to the end of the book, you will remember that. And so this is where I think it's worth it to just go through it anyway. Like creating characters, I don't think you need to read it all at once, although you can. The thing is, because it's designed as a collection of essays and chapters from other books, you can technically just pick what you need to learn for today. I would say on the second read-through. On the first read-through, again, it's curated in a certain order for a certain reason, so I would recommend you read it from cover to cover, just to make sure you get all the information. But once you have that locked in, if there's something you need to go back and remind yourself of, you're not going to lose a step by just jumping right to that chapter. And it's the same with creating characters. It's the same with this. It's going to be the same when we get to their other compilation in a few weeks. And it's just that's the thing, is treat it respectfully. Make sure you use it to learn your craft, and then practice your craft. And dialogue is an important part of craft. It's part of it. And here's the thing. We're doing dialogue now and not earlier or later, because dialogue is also a fine bridge between character development and then what we're going into next week. And if you can master dialogue, which I'm not sure anyone can truly master dialogue, you do have people like Elmore Leonard who know how to do it well, but not everyone, not even the greatest writers, not all of them are great at dialogue. Some are confessed bad dialogue writers, which they probably have to have other people helping them craft it. This is where I would say go back and practice. I'm not a fan of free writing at all, but I think that free writing is useful when you're trying to practice. When you want to just have a little scene on the side, that you can use. It's, you're not going to use in your novel, but you might want to use to develop your character better, to understand your character better. Part of that free writing might include the dialogue that they might have with, let's say, their dog or their cat or their wife or their son or their coworker or their boss or their neighbor, whoever. And you can try different ways to see how they respond. How does their personality change? Are they snooty with their boss? Are they reverent to their kid? Are they do they worship their dog? I mean, how do they respond to people or objects or animals? This is a way you can kind of treat it useful to you, because if you can learn your character through that method, then that would be consistent throughout your novel too when you actually put them in a longer form story. So there's methods that you can use to make it better, but you can also practice the standards that they teach you on how to do it in a way that's not hokey, in a way that's natural to who the characters are and the situation they're in. So I think it's worth it. Again, the whole series is about reading the books. That'll help you get better. There's going to be a lot of overlap. And we can't cover every book that's out there. There's a lot of books out there, and a lot of them cover similar ground. I would say even if you don't get this one, check out Robert McKee's book to see what he has in his estimation. Because again, I don't know how good he is at dialogue, but he's darn good at storytelling and identifying when a story works. I would think when dialogue works too. So my advice is get both. Get this as your introduction, and then you maybe use his book as an advanced course. But if you are the kind of person who struggles with dialogue, and I was that person for a long time, I had dumb dialogue. I was a kid who invented words in order to avoid cursing, or if in order to avoid a cliche, I'd make up something even worse than the cliche because I didn't get it, and it took a while to train that part of me. And now I think it's one of my stronger assets. Doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. There's going to be some misses, but I think that when I can use it well in the context of what I'm writing, then not only am I doing my job right, but my reader is going to be, it's going to look forward to seeing what's next. Dialogue is what makes characters interesting. I mean, actions do too, but the things they say, it defines who they are, defines their outlook on life. Words matter. Words, the words you say has meaning, and of course, you have to be careful when words change meaning, because that hurts your character, hurts you, hurts your story. So having your character say something is your way of revealing who they are, whatever it is that they say. And so you want to make sure you can get it right. And so I think this book will help you figure out what that is, how to display it in a way that's not contrived or overbearing. And the other thing I'm going to end on this is, when you do find that rhythm, when you do find that dialogue that works, don't abuse it. Because, again, like everything else, you have to take everything in moderation. If everybody talked like they're cool, then no one's cool. So you got to just be mindful of when you're using things and where. So you can, again, read through the book, learn how to identify, what works, what doesn't, how to make your characters authentic. There's a whole wealth of things you can learn, but I think it's, again, another book worth having on your library shelf if you want to improve your skills. And this particular series, dialogue, crafting characters, and the third one I'm going to be doing in the next couple weeks. I'm not sure when exactly. I'm reading it now, so that's why I'm not going to spoil it yet. But it shouldn't take too difficult of detective work to figure out which one it's going to be. But that'll be coming soon. But I mean, putting them all together, I think they're valuable resources. Writer's Digest books, I think they get it right. It's a shame that they got bought. I think they had to close their writer's store because their original parent company, I guess, folded, and so they had to get bought out by another company who, when they just recently redid their bookstore. They didn't bring the bookstore back, which is I think it's a shame. I think that was one of their greatest assets, was having a central hub to find all the books that they've had in that season. Now you can still go to Amazon and look up Writer's Digest books, or F+W Media, which is their parent company. And I think years ago there might have even been a different one, but just hunt around, and even the books that we didn't cover, you might find something that you really like. you know, and there's some books that we were not going to have time to cover, so I might do like a little a list of books that you should check out, even though we haven't covered it at some point. I may, if you want to hear that list, go ahead and let me know in the comments. We'll see what I can do about that. But anyway, but that's it for today. Come back next week. We'll go into a slightly different topic. It's not quite as in depth as I had hoped, but it's still a good book. But come back for that, and then don't forget to like, subscribe to all the things that YouTube are excited to do. Please check out my website if it's open. Again, I'm saying this in the hope that it is open. I can't say for sure that it will be by the time you watch this, but you know, I'm always going to cross my fingers. So do make sure that you visit my website. It should be in the description below. And if you go on, just check out my books, and you can support me by picking one up if you see one you like. So anyway, that's it for today, and come back next week, and we'll continue our next episode. Thanks again. See you next time. Bye.